India is a country which was the aim of global navigation for almost the entirety of global history. Whenever they set out, whether it was Vasco da Gama or Christopher Columbus, one going one way, the other going the other way, they were looking for India. When Columbus set off, what was his aim? To find a route to the Indies. When he first spotted land, they called it the West Indies. Then when they reached the North American mainland, they found the local population, the Aboriginal population, today called Native Americans, and called them Red Indians. The Portuguese, the Spanish, the Dutch, the French, the British all wanted to find and did find a sea route to India. Most of you watching the broadcast can probably imagine the Indian peninsula jutting out with the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal on one end, and almost dominating an ocean which was literally named after the country, the Indian Ocean. With the Andaman Islands, we forget that Indonesia is a neighboring country of India, and through it, of course, go the Straits of Malacca. Just north of that is Singapore, and then, of course, the Sea of Japan, what is now called by the Chinese the South China Sea, and the East China Sea. Now, in the southern part of India, on the western coast, lies the state of Kerala, known for its tourism. On the eastern side lies Tamil Nadu, known for its language and history, and now as the home of the manufacture of the iPhone 15. We don't often discuss the ports. When all of global history has been dominated by trade and the building of ports, because bulk cargo can, and in the foreseeable future, the next 50, 100 years, there is no technology that replaces the transshipment of bulk cargo than the sea. If India wants to become the manufacturing hub, it has to be able to transport that to all over the world, to receive raw materials and transport finished goods. That has to be done through our ports. What you're seeing on the extreme right of your screens is something that has just happened today. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the container transshipment port of Kerala, Vizhinjam. That's the Kerala Chief Minister flagging off the first ship docking ceremony where a heavy load cargo carrier sailing in from the East China Sea has docked today. It has a strategic position on Kerala's coast and potentially becomes a hub for the world. Now, in this point of time, we've seen the hubs emerging. Just on the other side of the Arabian Sea, you have Dubai, where DP World operates a port. We are trying to build this corridor, which is already put on paper, which is the India, Middle East, Europe corridor. That corridor goes overland from the Emirates and ends at the port of Haifa, which happens to be in Israel. Let's open up this conversation and let's look at maritime trade in India as perhaps we haven't for a long period of time. Captain Shyam Kumar is joining us. He's been a captain in the Indian Navy. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya is with us. He's president for the Center of Digital Economy Policy Research. And Captain Alok Bansal is with us on the broadcast as well. As others join, I'll introduce them across the course. Let me get a strategic perspective first. Captain Kumar, we have for too long never really discussed India's ports. It's not been the trendy topic, trending viral topic to discuss. The inauguration of this port, which is run by Adani Enterprises, has given us an opportunity to discuss this. Tell us a bit about the Kerala coastline and the importance and the location of the Vizhinjam port, sir.
Thank you, Rishabh, for giving me this opportunity. See, the world, all the prosperous developed countries have always been relying on the maritime trade for their growth. Any country needs to look around to see that the connectivity through the maritime channel is important for economy, the growth, population's growth, the employment, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. Therefore, India being a maritime country, having a 7,500 kilometer plus coastline, plus say almost 2.38 square kilometers of the exclusive economic zone around us, which is highly rich in the minerals, in fishing, in many other ways, oil exploration, etc. Plus, we all know that India has a rich maritime traditions. We have ports and harbors, shipping in Gujarat and Arab countries having our maritime routes with the Arab countries and even all the places. Now, having said that, it is very, very known to everybody that almost 30 to 40% of the cargo, mineral, oil are going each day through the Indian Ocean. We are strategically located, and mainly now Sri Lanka below us and the Cochin and Trivandrum, that Vizhunjam harbour which is coming up. Now all this is very close to this maritime route, and therefore if we do not have a capable harbour or a port to house the cargo ships or a larger container carriers, then obviously we were missing out.
Well, we've always had them, sir, as you well know, from Lothal onwards 2000 years ago. We've had the ports.
Yes, that's what I said.
It's
in Gujarat. Yes,
it's the centrality of India. We obviously lost Karachi when partition happened, which is why we developed the ports in Gujarat, which of course, ironically, of course, are under the management of the Adanis as well. So, as is the port on the other side, near Chennai. So, let me quickly get Jayjeet into this. Jayjeet, so this particular port, once it's fully completed, and it's in first phase right now, but in the next decade or so, will be able to manage 6.2 million containers per year. That's about half of the total containers that are docked in India at this point of time. So 50% of India's current capacity will just be one port. There are other ports all across the western and eastern seaboard. India as a maritime trade hub, what does that really mean and why is that important?
So, India was supposed to be naturally the maritime hub, and so it has been. In fact, the port that we are referring to was a functioning port in the 2nd century BC, if not earlier than that. And you had mentioned about other ports also. What has happened is that when the ships become bigger and bigger, Indian ports did not scale up to take care of that kind of cargo. And therefore, the ships would dock in, let's say, Colombo, and then the goods would be transferred to smaller ships, and then those ships would bring the goods into India. So the large market is only India, but it's feeding into the ports of Singapore, ports of Colombo, ports of Dubai, and so on and so forth. So it's giving business to other ports. There was absolutely no rationale as to why we should not have our own deep sea ports. All kinds of ports are important. We have set up a lot of coastal ports, which is important for coastal shipping for smaller vessels. We also have ports which handle the medium-sized vessels. But the super large vessels, which carry 100,000 terminal equivalent, the TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units, those ships could not berth in India. And therefore, they would go to the Colombo and Hambantota and so on and so forth. Hambantota, as we know, is now owned by the Chinese in Sri Lanka. With this port coming in, clearly it will impact business in other ports. It will also ensure that we have a supply chain security within India, so that we are not threatened by any other port cutting us off. And then India also starts becoming a much more competitive in terms of its own supply chain, because then we can start exporting goods from India to other countries at a much lower cost. So logistics cost comes down. The famous 17% handicap that we have in supply chain, that starts getting reduced.
Okay.
Having said that, it also means that we need to build the back end of the port, because there has to be connectivity to the port.
Yeah, okay, so let me address that. So with the Vizhunjam port, they've built a dedicated 2-kilometer highway which connects it to the nearest highway. They built a dedicated 10-kilometer railway line, and that's everything. And I'm going to repeat a couple of points. Number one, there is no other alternative to bulk trade than the sea route. The economies of scale apply on the sea route like they apply nowhere else. The bigger the ship, the cheaper per container cost. And global trade functions on the sea. If you want to be a global trader, you have to trade via the sea. And now we have a jewel in the crown, which has a 22-meter underwater depth. It, I think, has a 17 or 18-meter height, which is the height of the ships that can come in. So let me address that specifically with Commander Bhushan Dewan. Commander Dewan, deep water ports. Now, when we are talking about tonnage, for example, this ship that is coming in 100,000 container units, why do we need deep water ports that can handle these megalithic ships?
Thank you, Rishabh, for having me on your program. This is this port is going to handle ULCS, that is ultra large container ships, having the capacity of taking more than 14,500 TEUs and above. What is TEU? TEU is 20-ton equivalent unit, roughly 4 meters, 6 meter length, 2 meter wide, 2.5 meter wide.
Also known as a container. Everybody understands yes. Container. It's basically one container.
TEU, yeah. This is the technical term is TEU. The point is, right now in phase 1 million tons MTPA, million tons per annum, that is the capacity that this port is going to have. The greatest thing is, as you were mentioning in the earlier part of your introduction, we are at this port, we are bang in between the Suez Canal and Strait of Malacca. We should leverage that. It's a natural draft port, and earlier, as Dr. Bhattacharya was mentioning earlier, if there's any cargo which has to come inland in Andhra Pradesh or Tamil Nadu, the thing had to be unloaded in Colombo and then brought to, let's say, Andhra or Tamil Nadu or wherever. But now with this port coming up, we don't have to depend upon them. So or maybe nearby ports apart from Colombo, or Dubai or further Singapore and so on. The point is, if with China's reducing footprint of the global scale and India's ambition to emerge the global scale, the sea trade, which we have only 17 million tons per year, as opposed to China, 220 million tons per year. We really have to ramp up our...
Okay. So let me just put some more facts into the pie. 70% of the global tonnage, which is mercantile tonnage, 70% of it goes through this route, through the Straits of Malacca. 70% of the global tonnage goes through the route which you are at the center of, as the commander just pointed out, at the very tip of Kerala.
And the point is,
yes.
Now with the supply chain, the trade between Europe and China, we are bang in the center, we control that now. And second thing is, this is a natural advantage. And the costs which were earlier involved in transshipment, the term transshipment, as Dr. Bhattacharya was mentioning, because you could not unload goods here. So you had to, the big containers couldn't berth here, couldn't dock here. So they had to go per force to Colombo, and then you bring them.
Okay, so let me just put that into qualification to our viewers, and then quickly get Captain Bansal into this conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, of course, the trade of Indian ports has primarily been you land products that are destined to India, and of course take away products that are sent from export. India has been very poor at transshipment. Why is transshipment important? Transshipment is important because there have to be intermediary ports. Most shipping lines, mercantile lines, run between one destination to the other. You need an intermediary port for several reasons. Most of them are logistic reasons. So there will be a shipping line that is, let's say, doing the route from the Middle East or the Gulf into the Indo-Pacific. Then there'll be a shipping line that takes it all the way to China. So there has to be a transshipment point. India is the logical geographical transshipment point, but we haven't had the porting capacity to do it. We are now developing it. It's nowhere close to what we need. 6 million, which is single port can handle, also may not be enough, but at least we got it started. Captain Bansal, this is not just about products that are, okay, somebody has to ship cars from Korea, so they land them at this port, very good. This is about the game is in transshipment. Can you explain that to our viewers, please?
You need to understand that for a port, you need a certain amount of depth.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular Vizhunjam port, the approach channel is 24 meters. So,
yes.
Technically speaking, a ship which is even more than 24 meters can come, because this depth is actually calculated from chart data. In fact, the height of tide you can edit and actually it can come. Thereafter, it depends how much are the berths where the ships can go and go alongside. Now, what happens is most of Indian ports are incapable of taking heavier ships. Now, the deeper a ship, greater is the capacity. These are the ships with huge capacity, and bulk of the cargo actually travels by these ships. Now, invariably, since these ships could not enter Indian ports, they would go to nearest transshipment port. That could be Colombo if it was in the south, or could be Dubai in case of north, from where they would be transported into smaller ships and carried. Now, please understand, in India's case, over 92% of our trade is carried by the sea. Now, if we have to emerge as a major power, we have to have deep ports. Now, the advantage with Vizhinjam port is another. See, it's not only the ports. Our port management in the past had been very bad. Indian ships turnaround time was a very, very long period of time. The ships would come, they would take hell of a long time. Now, the advantage of Vizhinjam port is it's the private sector. Now, private sector, it has always been observed as far more efficient as compared to public sector ports. So this is not only going to be a deep sea port, it's going to be a faster port. And its location close to Colombo would make it feasible for most of the cargo, especially for the west coast, to disembark here, and even other areas. Long back, India had proposed a deep sea port in Andaman and Nicobar Islands primarily. I don't know what is happening about that, but that would also probably at some stage have to come up, because if India has to emerge as a major shipping hub, we'll have to do that. Now, we are not only becoming a production facilities, but an ideal transshipment port is where a product from third country is coming and going to another country without its destination necessarily being India.
Okay.
So that will be the eventual outcome when this port emerges as an ideal transshipment port for this part of the world, not only for India.
Okay, so now we are seeing puzzle pieces in play. Okay, so you've seen the Adani group, which is building, of course, already built the port in Gujarat. It has built the port in Tamil Nadu, or is operating the port there. It has redeveloped this port here, which has just completed phase 1, and you've seen the first ship, of course, arrive over there. The captain has mentioned turnaround time. Just like an aircraft sitting on the tarmac is making no money, a ship sitting in port is making no money. It has to be en route somewhere. So if you're taking multiple days to turn around a ship, that's a loss-making enterprise. And when the global shippers, the biggest ones, are operating, a few hours per ship is millions of dollars per year difference. And when they choose a port, they're going to choose it on the basis of how quickly you turn around a vessel. Now, there are various aspects that go into this. Number one, of course, is congestion. If there are lots of vessels queued up, there will be a larger time. But the other is the infrastructural ability and the management ability to do it. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, we have to be aces at that, because the geographical convenience is already in your favor. Now, the economic efficiency has to be made in your favor as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because as we mentioned, the port evacuation facility also needs to be there. So to begin with, it's a new port. So the assumption will be that it will be more efficient than the existing ports, because it will be using new technologies. Having said that, there also needs to be an ability to operate a port of this size. And let me also bring in, a comparison with other ports. The Shanghai port has a capacity of roughly about 45 million TEUs. Singapore port is about 37 million TEUs, and this one is only 1 million TEUs. So gradually it has to grow with the ability and the tribal knowledge to be able to operate a port of this size. And so when we reach 6 million TEUs, which is what the port is designed for, we should be also be able to evacuate in the back. Now, you did mention about the roads being created and so on and so forth. But in India, what the truckers do is they come and park their trucks on these roads, thereby blocking it. So has to be enforcement. There has to be some disciplinary steps that needs to be taken to make sure that blockage does not happen in the arterial route from the port to the back end of the hinterland. And also, transshipment involves actually taking the containers out and putting them into another ship. That should happen extremely efficiently.
Yeah, it happened efficiently. Okay, which is pure logistics, and the logistics plays that, as Jayji has already pointed out, is a major factor in the cost of goods, is a major factor in companies deciding whether they want to purchase goods from India. Because if you're going to burn money transporting it from the point of production to the port, from the port, then further, because your efficiencies are low, major decisions in global manufacturing get made on these percentage points, because percentage points of 1% here and there is billions of dollars in global trade. Let me quickly then, in terms of port management, get Captain Shyam Kumar back into this. Captain Shyam Kumar, as we start hitting $5 trillion, anywhere beyond that, our ability to channelize more transshipment and product import export from our ports will have to double in the next 10 to 15 years. Incremental growth isn't enough. We have to double it. Now we are going to have to build not only the geographically best located ports, but also the most efficient ports. How do we do it?
Surely, see, this port is a new development. We welcome Zhen Hua 15 today as the first ship. This is a stage one, and it has been well planned as far as this growth of this port is concerned. We are going to, with the 400-meter berthing facility now, every phase we are going to increase it by 400 to 600 meters for the more ships to come, as well as the 1.2 million TEU to 2.2 plus 2.2 going to be 6 TEU so far. So it is a planned, proper PPP planned operation by Kerala government center and the Adani group. And I'm sure with Adani having experience of it, this port is going to come up and meet the expectations soon. As far as the other ports are concerned, we have 9 major ports. We have Mumbai, Kandla, Mundala, Dindiyal port, but we call it, and Kakinada, Visakhapatnam, Chennai, Tuticorin. So southern part as well as mostly the southern part we want to develop. So the Tuticorin port is one of the port which can be properly taken into. Only thing is the natural harbour. All the round the clock, the 12 months operation because of breakwaters in this channel at the Kerala coast port. We are lucky to have this. And similarly for Mumbai, we are able to do it being a natural harbour for 16 meters up to, here we have 22 meters depth. So this is going to be efficient. We need to find out more and explore more ports in the southern part of India, peninsular India, so that we can have the hold on to the strategic location close to the shipping channels of the world.
So on the other side in Tamil Nadu, you have Ennore, you have Kattupalli, which are important ports, one of course being a container terminal. Let me quickly get Alok Bansal back into this. Captain Bansal, when we are looking at expanding India's capacity by double, of course, the irony in what Captain Shyam Kumar just said, which you have the central government, the Kerala government and the Adani group, we've just proven that when it comes to important projects, we can work together and achieve something very special, regardless of the politics that consumes us. So we have a post-political agenda in getting things done. What is the kind of energy and what is the benefit to the coastal states that you see from this?
There is a huge amount of benefit because when ships come, there is a huge manpower that is employed. The cargo has to be unloaded. The ship, a port management involves enormous ancillary units actually. And then wherever the port is, actually, if the ships are coming, then the industry often comes up because for them, the cost, especially the export-based industry, if they are close to a port, their costs, exporting costs actually reduce considerably because if they are sending goods abroad, and if it is close to the port, their costs come down drastically. If they are dependent on imported material, again their costs come down because the goods come to the port and actually are delivered to the factory next door. So that's the advantage, and actually that's why a big port can be apex for can be the point from where the development actually starts.
Okay, so let me just ask a follow-up question, Captain Bansal. For Kerala, which is primarily we're considering a farming economy, a tourism economy, for an industrial economy or at least a manufacturing economy to develop there, does this port become a great attractor?
See, Kerala has an educated manpower, has already got a Cochin port, but the problem in Kerala was the militant trade unionism, which actually prevented industries actually from thriving. Apollo Tires and the few industries that were suffering. Of late, that is changing, and I think a private sector port which can control the labor force and manage efficient functioning will thrive, because there is a natural geographical advantage which Kerala has, and I think with a trained and educated manpower that actually exists.
Yes. Well, there always exist threats. We all know what happened to the copper plant in Tuticorin, which has been shut now for 5 years, and that's knocking off 40% of India's copper capacity. So there are always threats that emerge, and we'll focus on the threats also. But right now we're talking about the opportunity here, and let me just touch upon this with Commander Bhushan Dewan. Commander Dewan, when it comes to the southern states, in the sheer economic opportunity, we're already talking about iPhones, the latest one being made in Tamil Nadu. I mean, it's a game changer if a large percentage of India's global manufacturing trade is going to go through these southern ports.
Sure, definitely. Also, I might add, Rishabh, on a personal note, I have served as Senior Vice President of Adani Port, APSEZ in Mundra. Adani has 30% of the port infrastructure controlled by Adani. Haifa, Vietnam, and all over, the vast experience in handling it. Let me tell you the problem about evacuation. Starting from the ship, container ship, when it comes, is computerized planning is there that which container will be unloaded here. Otherwise, you don't want to land up when the ship comes to keep shifting containers within the ship. A. B. Quick evacuation, this is called multimodal port. Multimodal means evacuation by road, by sea, by water, if possible. In this case, not possible, by air. So that again is there. And I think Vadhavan port in Mumbai is also next on the cards. It is a 18 meters draft port, midway between Mundra and this port, Vizhunjam port. So the issue is that we have a long way to go, but we have made a beginning, and this port is being built on DBFOT, design, build, operate, fund and transfer mode. So basically it's a government of India undertaking, fine, but for all practical purposes being run by Adani because of their vast experience. And I think this is a very good beginning, and it is for the full southern zone. And again, as you touched about cruise terminal is also thereby coming up.
Yes.
That again will help developing cruise.
Yeah, develop tourism. I mean, we all think of Nordic cruises and cruises in, I don't know, Siberia and the Mediterranean, not really very confidently around India. And there's so much of the Indian coastline to explore. Imagine the Bombay, the Goa, to Cochin via cruise ship. It's a whole industry that doesn't really exist in India at any scale. Ladies and gentlemen, things are happening fast. What a treat it is to see these things built. I get really excited about them. I thank my guests for joining us, who are also equally excited about it. Huge opportunities coming up here in India.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.